Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports. My name is Reese and we are ramping up for the start of the Portuguese Grand Prix for the Moto GP. It is looking like it's going to be an exciting race ahead of us, looking like clear weather out here in Portugal, full grandstands. We've got all of the bikes on the grid getting ready to start. We've got under 5 minutes left to get going. I see Fabio Quartararo on his bike already with his grid girl holding the umbrella above him now. He's qualified down in 9th place. He had a good start yesterday. We'll have to wait and see what he'll be able to do today. But to take you through our starting grid for this Portuguese Grand Prix, Enea Bastianini is on the front row. If you watched the sprint race yesterday, you'll know what happened there. He didn't have the best starts, but hopefully today he will have a better comeback. He starts in first place with Maverick Vinales alongside him in second, Jorge Martin as well in third. Those are the three riders on the front row of the grid. Then Francesco Bagnaia, he had a brilliant start yesterday and took the lead of the race, unfortunately just losing out near the end. But he is starting in fourth place, the first of the drivers on that second row. Jack Miller then in fifth, Marco Bezzecchi then in sixth. Pedro Acosta seventh. Marc Marquez had a brilliant race yesterday. He got all the way up to second place. He will be starting down in eighth. Fabio Quartararo in ninth. Brad Binder, he crashed out of the sprint race yesterday, but is feeling quietly confident for this race today. We'll have to wait and see what he can do. He's starting down in 10th place. Alex Rins 11th. Alex Marquez in 12th. Alex Espargaro 13th. Fabio Antonio 14th. Miguel Oliveira starts in 15th place. Raul Fernandez 16th. Franco Morbidelli 17th. Augusto Fernandez in 18th. Johan Zarco 19th. And Johan Mir 20th. Taka Nakagami then 21st. And Luca Marini in 22nd. So just heard the national anthem now ahead of this race. It is getting very, very animated out there at the Algarve circuit. Really looking forward to seeing what their riders can do. Of course, we do have a Portuguese rider, Miguel Oliveira, starting down in 15th, so they'll be cheering on their home crowd hero. As we have some comments there, Sholina just giving their support for Jorge Lorenzo. He is starting, of course, in... Where is Jorge Lorenzo? Does Jorge Lorenzo even ride anymore? I don't think so. But yeah, just watching now as we have the riders all getting ready to start their warm-up laps. We've got about 2 minutes left until this race gets underway. A whole bunch more of you guys now jumping onto the stream. Thank you very much for joining. Be sure to hit that like button as well as subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date with all of the latest motorsport, MotoGP and Formula One news out here on Forever Motorsports. 3,800 subs of you guys on here already today. Thank you very much. Let's get that up to 4,000 by the end of the day. So just looking at this grid, who do we think could be in contention for that first place? Francesco Bagnaia had a brilliant start in the sprint race yesterday. He was really managing the race quite well from the front, but then had an uncharacteristic mistake into the first corner of the track, just losing it under braking. And unfortunately, he fell all the way down, I think, to about 6th or 5th place and was fighting with Jack Miller there. So he could be in contention for it, but of course, Enea Bastianini is going to be wanting to have a better race start than he had yesterday. Of course, he doesn't have the slipstream down into turn 1, which really did seem to help Jack Miller, who really launched himself quite well on that KTM bike. It is a great starting bike. So Brad Binder will also be hoping to make up a couple of positions from that 10th place starting position that he is in. Fabio Quartararo down in 9th. He's also a brilliant starter, as is Marc Marquez. We're going to definitely be watching what Marc Marquez can do there on the start after what we saw him doing yesterday. He got up into 2nd place and just managed it for quite some time, fighting it out with other riders for that position, lost it, but gained it back again. Just watching him now on the front row, as well as his brother Alex Marquez in that same team. He's starting down in 12th place, but it is going to be a very interesting first couple of laps. As we have 1 minute left to go until the warm-up lap gets underway out here at the Algarve International Circuit. So looking at what tyre strategies people can go on today, it looks like a lot of people are doing the medium and medium tyre strategy. Yesterday we saw medium softs, or hard softs being used. This is a high degradation circuit, so I would expect quite a few people to go hard mediums or maybe take a chance again on hard softs. But medium could be a very interesting strategy here today. Of course, you can't change your tires on a MotoGP bike. Whatever you choose, you're stuck with for the entirety of the race. But I think the ones at the front certainly need to manage their tyre wear a little bit better. They're going to be fending off quite a few attacks from the likes of those of possibly Jack Miller, Marc Marquez, Pedro Acosta. You can't really count him out, can you? He had the fastest lap yesterday during the race at one point, and then Marc Marquez was really pushing up those lap times, and he stole the fastest lap near the end. Just looking at the championship standings, Fabio Di Giannantonio is currently 10th in the standings. Brad Binder, I think, is still second, but will be at a little bit of a risk now because of his crash out of that sprint race yesterday, losing out on some possibility of points. But I'm sure he will bounce back here today. Watching his teammate, though, Jack Miller, on that second row of the grid, he really did have a good start yesterday, making his way up into second place. Unfortunately, lost out on that second place near the end of the race, but he was showing some great race pace here. Himself, KTM and Brad Binder seem quite confident with their race pace for today, but what can they do to match those Ducatis? They are, of course, the form of the field, much as the Red Bulls and the Ferraris are the form of the field in Formula One. They are the ones who are taking it really at the forefront of MotoGP. Those bikes are just absolutely incredible on their tyre management, on their race pace, as well as just in the braking zones. They're able to brake really nice and late. But we'll have to wait and see what people are able to do in the race today. A whole bunch of people giving their support as Mike King just gives their support for Marc Marquez. Electroborg saying that we cannot show the race. No, we can't. Because it is illegal to show that footage, which is why we bring you live race commentary as well as all the time boards so you can see what is going on. We've got the safety car now going around the track. It looks like we've got 5 minutes left to get going until the start of the race. They may have just delayed it by an extra 5 minutes, but that is fine. We should get that warm-up lap starting very, very shortly. As we see the Martinator, Jorge Martin, in third place on the grid. He had a great race yesterday as well, but Maverick Vinales will be wanting to repeat what he did yesterday. So, tyre choices for today: hard on the fronts and mediums on the backs. By the looks of it, for the majority of the grid, first, second, and third have chosen that tyre strategy. So, I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of the grid do choose to do that. Very interesting set of tyre strategies for today. I expect the majority of the grid are going to copy that. But Maverick Vinales, starting in second place, will be wanting to have a repeat of what happened yesterday. Of course, Francesco Bagnaia not doing too well in the one braking zone in the first corner and losing out on that first position. That gave the race lead to Maverick Vinales. He managed that brilliantly to the end of the race. He'll certainly be hoping that something like that happens again today. Unfortunately, if something doesn't really happen with those Ducati boys by mistake, then you have to think that they should be quite comfortably in the lead of the race. So as we look now for the start of this race to get underway, we're waiting for the titles to get rolling. Be sure to let us know in the comment section down below who you are supporting for this race, as we are watching the riders now on the grid getting ready to start their warm-up lap. Hopefully it shouldn't be too much of a copy and paste of what we saw yesterday. I think people will be a little bit more learned after what happened yesterday during the race, especially Brad Binder down on 10th. He won't want to have a copy and paste of what happened. Of course, he crashed out on, I think it was about lap 3 or 4. As we have some more comments down in the comment section. Thank you very much for everyone for joining. 800 of you watching alongside with us now, and only 80 likes on our stream. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as well if you want to stay up to date with all of the latest motorsports, MotoGP and Formula One news, as we now have the warm-up lap getting underway. So, Enea Bastianini on pole position for the second time in his career in MotoGP. As we look at the previous circuit winners, Bagnaia won last year. Quartararo won the year before. Who will win it, though, in 2024? Total attendance here this weekend is 175,000 fans. Brilliant, brilliant turnout for this race this weekend. And we are getting ready now for lights out around this Algarve International Circuit. It is a very difficult circuit around here. It is quite tight and of course turning, but it has heavy undulations that make it like a roller coaster, as they often like to call it, the Portuguese roller coaster around here in the Algarve. It really has a lot of elevation and drops in elevation as well, which makes it such an exciting circuit to watch racing around. We're just a couple of minutes away from the start of this race as we are on the warm-up lap. Looking at the temperature out here on circuit is 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 24 degrees Celsius, and the track temperature is 30 degrees Celsius around this circuit. So good temperatures for these riders to all get out. It is a little bit overcast overhead, but it does not look like we should get any rain. Looking at the current championship standings, Bagnaia is in first place. Brad Binder has dropped now to third place, and I think it is Jorge Martin in second, if I'm not mistaken. I might just have to go back in my stream to see what those championship standings were. As we do now have the start of this race, Jorge Martin has taken the lead, Maverick Vinales in second, Enea Bastianini in third, and Francesco Bagnaia in fourth. It looks like my stream was just a little bit delayed there at the start, but really looking quite punchy on this first lap. Brad Binder made his way up into seventh, Pedro Acosta in eighth, Fabio Quartararo in ninth. Brad Binder getting chased down by Pedro Acosta right now, getting put under a lot of pressure for that seventh position. Pedro Acosta, of course, the young rookie, I think, in MotoGP, he is doing so well right now as Marc Marquez getting put under pressure by Bagnaia. Marc Marquez chasing down Francesco Bagnaia for fourth place right now. Enea Bastianini in third. He lost out that pole position from the start of this race. Difficult for him, unfortunately. But Jorge Martin currently comfortable in first place, waiting to see what that gap is. It looks like it's about half a second from Vinales to Martin. Enea Bastianini chasing down Maverick Vinales for that second place, but there is a bit of a gap from second to third now, as those two Ducatis are falling slowly back from the front two. Not close enough to make an attack from Martin and Marc Marquez on Bagnaia for fourth place. Brad Binder all over the back of his teammate now. You have to think if there's going to be team orders taking place there to let Brad Binder looking like the faster bike through from Jack Miller, as Pedro Acosta is also putting a lot of pressure over the back of him right now. Brad Binder slowly falling back from Jack Miller now. Will he be able to pick up the pace and come back at his teammates, as Pedro Acosta is going to be looking to take that position if either of them are too slow. 22 laps to go of the 24-lap race around here in, or 25-lap race around here in the Algarve. Sector 2, yellow flag. Who has gone off? Still showing a yellow flag in Sector 2. Raul Fernandez has crashed. Raul Fernandez is out of this race as he has crashed in Sector 2. Waiting to see where it is. Turn 8 is where he's crashed out on this Portimao circuit. Yeah, he's looking frustrated. He's in the gravel, off the bike. Difficult for himself. As we have 800 of you watching alongside with us, thank you very much for joining in for this MotoGP Grand Prix out here in Portugal. Jorge Martin is currently leading the race, 0.5 seconds ahead of Maverick Vinales and Enea Bastianini, a little bit back from that second place position. Francesco Bagnaia, the other Ducati bike, also chasing down his teammates. Marc Marquez then chasing down the podium positions in fifth. Jack Miller sixth. Brad Binder sixth behind his teammates as Pedro Acosta makes a late lunge into turn one. Brad Binder too late on the brakes and he loses out on that sixth position. Or rather, sorry, that looks like it was Jack Miller who braked a little bit too late there. Quite confusing with the two KTM bikes right next to each other. But Pedro Acosta has gotten past Jack Miller now. Next up the road for him is Brad Binder. Brad Binder really fighting for that position right now to fend off the young Pedro Acosta. Marc Marquez to Brad Binder. Now that gap is starting to open up a little bit. Brad Binder needs to close that down. It started opening up a lot when Jack Miller was there, but that is why they needed to let Brad Binder through. The gap is 0.8 seconds, a large gap for him to now make up with 21 laps left to go of this race. Pedro Acosta put a huge amount of pressure all over the back of Brad Binder, the South African rider. Pedro Acosta looking like he's really going to make a lunge at any second. He's all over the back of Brad Binder right now on that KTM bike. Of course, Pedro Acosta on the same bike for a different team. So being able to really match whatever Brad Binder's doing now, and he's now got the slipstream. Will he make a move into turn one as they come down the long start finish straight all over the back of him? He goes to the inside, really close to Brad Binder. Brad Binder a little bit late on the brakes, being able to hold out that first position or that sixth position right now from Pedro Acosta. And yeah, Bastianini has the fastest lap in third place. He's trying to chase down Maverick Vinales, but that gap is still a little bit too big. 0.3 seconds is that gap. Vinales also right now not able to make up that gap to Jorge Martin ahead of himself. The gap is 0.3 seconds from Vinales to Martin, and the gap now from Vinales to Bastianini is half a second. That's opened up a little bit more. Brad Binder and Pedro Acosta on the same tyre strategies here on lap 5 or lap 6 of the race. Really putting a lot of pressure all over each other, trying to catch up to Marc Marquez. The gap is closing. It was 0.8 seconds. It's now at half a second. So they are really pushing to close the gap to Marc Marquez and try get to those podium positions. Still a lot of time left in this race, 20 laps left to go, but it does go so quickly. And if you don't take those opportunities, you will unfortunately lose out. Be sure to let us know in the comment section where you are watching in from and who you are supporting for this MotoGP race, as we still have, as I said, 20 laps left to go. They're coming around the final corner on the circuit to start their next lap. Jorge Martin now being the gap now being closed down to him from Maverick Vinales. 0.1 seconds now is that gap. Vinales really closing it down into the braking zone. Late on the brakes, but still not able to close that gap. Now as Pedro Acosta looks to make a late move onto Brad Binder into turn one. Brad Binder losing out on that 6th place position now as the young rider of Pedro Acosta has gotten past him. He's shown great pace at the circuit all weekend, and Brad Binder now losing out on that position. Pedro Acosta now still has half a second to make up to Marc Marquez ahead of him. Brad Binder will, I'm sure, be able to hold on to him, but will they be able to get up to those podium positions? Hearing some riders are struggling a little bit with front tyre temperature, which is why they take a little bit of a rest to allow their tyres to cool and then make another attack, as we're seeing from Jorge Martin falling back a little bit and now looking like he's trying to close that gap again. And yeah, Bastianini closing that gap ever so slightly now down to Maverick Vinales at 0.4 seconds. Now, still a little bit out of touching distance as now Maverick Vinales loses a little bit more time to Jorge Martin ahead of him. Pedro Acosta's dropped Brad Binder quite quickly, which is interesting to hear. He's caught right up now to Marc Marquez. But how much of the tyre wear is Acosta taking out? The other riders might be a little bit more cautious with their tyre wear, whereas Acosta is just eating every single bit out of those tyres right now. Oh, someone's gone into the grass a little bit there, a bit of a puff of dirt out there, as now Acosta's all over the back of Marc Marquez, taking a big lunge into the braking zone, and he makes that move and makes it work on Marc Marquez. Marquez trying to fight it back out, going back to the inside, but Pedro Acosta has the pace right now. Brilliant move from Pedro Acosta for 5th place, and he sets the fastest lap of the race so far with a 1:38.9 for himself. He's now starting to pull out ahead of Marc Marquez, but you have to ask, how long will his tyres be able to last? Is he pushing a little bit too hard for these early stages of the race and taking out a little bit too much from his tyre wear? Or is he just making these moves when he has the opportunities? As Electroborg says, nice Acosta. Yes, certainly a brilliant move for him here. CRK also saying, awesome guy. He is certainly making this race quite interesting for us. Maverick Vinales still trying to close down that gap to Jorge Martin ahead of him. It is sitting at 0.3 seconds. Just watching a replay of the slipstream from Pedro Acosta on Marc Marquez. Brilliant late braking move from him. So close between the two. He goes a little bit wide on the exit. Marc Marquez tries to pull back at him, but Pedro Acosta just has that pace. I don't think Marc Marquez was expecting it at all, but Pedro Acosta saw the opportunity and took it. 18 laps now left to go of this 25-lap race in Portugal. $930 of you guys watching alongside with us. Be sure to hit that like button so we can get a little bit more recommended in the search bar, as Maverick Vinales is putting a lot of pressure now on the back of Jorge Martin. Pedro Acosta currently chasing down the reigning champion of Francesco Bagnaia. He is catching him at a rate of paces right now. Pedro Acosta trying to get the youngest rider ever to take a Premier Class race win away from, I think it is Marc Marquez, who currently holds onto that record. But Pedro Acosta, being so young, he has just a couple more races to make that stat work for himself, as he is really trying hard to get his first race. When Pedro Acosta down in 5th place right now, chasing down Francesco Bagnaia, the current world champion. He is catching him at a rate of paces right now. Marc Marquez trying to hold on to the back of him, but Pedro Acosta with phenomenal pace on his bike right now. Hopefully not taking too much pace out of those tyres and too much life out of them before the end of the race, as of course that could make things a little bit difficult for himself. But just watching him now getting all over the back of Francesco Bagnaia. Marc Marquez looking like he's really struggling to keep within touching distance of him. He's just able to get within touching distance of that Ducati as quickly as he wants, as now he has got that slipstream. Will he make another lunge into turn 1? He's all over the back of him now as they come across the start-finish line. A little bit too late, though, to make a lunge into that first corner. 0.2 seconds is the gap between Francesco Bagnaia and Acosta now. Marc Marquez also starting to pull that gap a little bit closer between the two of them, as CRK says Acosta is chasing the world champions. He certainly is. He's just making this a game. He's taken out one world champion already of Marc Marquez, and now he's got Francesco Bagnaia ahead of him. And he's looking like this is just a stroll, or a Sunday ride for him, rather. Looking at the current live standings, Jorge Martin is currently sitting in 1st place with Francesco Bagnaia in 2nd, Maverick Vinales in 3rd. Brad Binder falls down then to 4th place in the current championship standings. $100 likes on the stream. Thank you very much for all of you watching alongside with us. Be sure to also check out our channel partners, BITDEFENDER, linked in the description below. For all of your cybersecurity needs, be sure to check out the global leaders in cybersecurity, BITDEFENDER. Jorge Martin currently being chased down by Maverick Vinales. That gap is 0.3 seconds. Not as close, though, as the gap from Pedro Acosta to Francesco Bagnaia. Pedro Acosta really all over the back of him now as they're coming through the final couple of corners before that long straight before turn 1. Will he be able to get close enough to him to get that slipstream? He really is closing him down a little bit. The gap is now at 0.169 seconds. He should be close enough to really make an advantage out of the slipstream. Now he's trying to go down the inside, still too far off the back of the Ducati bike, but he is getting closer and closer every single lap. Ooh, Pedro Acosta really all over the back now of Francesco Bagnaia, maybe getting a little bit too close there as he falls a little bit further back. But looking now from Marc Marquez to the back of Pedro Acosta, he is really looking quite hooked up all over that bike. But Is he using up too much of his tires? He's really aggressive into all of these corners, whereas the riders with a little bit more experience are just slightly more cautious into the corners, taking it a little bit easier on their tires for when they might need it a little bit later in the race. We've got 15 laps left to go. We've done 10 laps of 25. So it's still a little bit to go as Acosta is trying to get onto the podium. Hey, he looks at making a move. It looks like there was a little bit of a mistake there from Francesco Bagnaia, going a little bit wide into one of those corners there. Maverick Vinales now putting a lot more pressure down on Jorge Martin as Enea Bastianini is trying to chase down Maverick Vinales. The gap now from Bastianini to Bagnaia is 1.3 seconds. They've really been able to pull out ahead of the rest of the grid. So it looks like the fight is between the top three right now for that first position. Pedro Acosta still all over the back of Francesco Bagnaia right now, really chasing him down. I think the closest he's ever been is he's coming down the start-finish straight. Late on the brakes, he's trying to get past him into turn one, and he does make that move work. Oh, a little bit of a slide. Will he be able to get it down and power down? No, he doesn't. He loses out once again. Back up to fifth place for him. He'll have to chase him down for another lap as now Marc Marquez is starting to join the fight. Very impressed by Pedro Acosta's work that he's doing here. Electroborg saying Bagnaia thinks for the whole race Acosta instead needs the visibility, so it's likely he'll pass. Just waiting to see what's going to happen. Watching a replay of this attempted pass from Acosta on Bagnaia. Just went a little bit too aggressive, hit the inside curb, and that just unsettled him on the exit there, unfortunately, as Mosina gives their support for Marc Marquez, 93. He's chasing down the likes of Pedro Acosta and Bagnaia, but still not within touching distance just yet. Brilliant show being shown now from Bagnaia, Acosta and Marc Marquez, all fighting out for that fourth position. But this is allowing that gap to the top three to fall even further. It is currently sitting at about 1.8 seconds, closing down on the 2-second mark now, as Acosta is still looking at making a move on Francesco Bagnaia, getting so close through this final sequence of corners before the long start-finish straight. Will he be able to sustain this level of aggression, though, for the rest of this race? That is what we have to ask. He's all over the back of Francesco Bagnaia again. Will he have another look as they come towards turn one? I think he's slightly too far back. He's trying to come alongside him, but still too far back into that braking zone. He'll have to manage it for a couple more laps and get a little bit closer. Bastianini still trying to chase down Vinales and Jorge Martin. Martin really looking so comfortable at the front of the race right now, managing it so well with a half a second gap to Vinales behind him. Brad Binder up in 7th, still trying to chase down Marc Marquez, but I think Marquez and the rest of the top 5 had too much pace for the likes of the rest of the grid right now. Brad Binder, Jack Miller, Fabian Quartararo at 9th, Miguel Oliveira at 10th. They're all trying to chase down that top 6, but are not able to get within touching distance. 13 laps left of the race to go, as Jorge Martin is still leading quite comfortably with a half a second gap lead to the rest. As now Enea Bastianini is starting to close down that gap on Maverick Vinales. Maybe he just looked after his tyres a little bit more and now is deciding to make use of that rubber, as he's really just closed down the gap now to Vinales within the last few corners of this racetrack. Just taking much tighter corners, being able to really hold it onto that apex. We can see just how close now he's able to get to the back of Vinales. Will he be able to mount an attack as they come through the start-finish straight? I don't think so. I think he's a little bit too far off the back of him still. But that gap is, the fight is allowing that gap to Jorge Martin at the front to open up ever so slightly more, as Pedro Acosta is still trying to close down that gap to Francesco Bagnaia, but Francesco Bagnaia has now set the new best race lap around the circuit with a 1:38.830. Bagnaia picking up the pace, and he is starting to drop Pedro Acosta behind him now. Just deciding now to use up his tyres. He's looked after them for 14 laps. We've now got 12 laps left to go. or rather 11 laps left to go. Jorge Martin has now really opened the pace for himself. He's put a 1 second gap now between himself and Maverick Vinales. Enea Bastianini still trying to chase down Vinales, and this has allowed Jorge Martin to really scamper away from those two. Fabio Quartararo being chased down by Miguel Oliveira now for 9th place. There's a bit of a battle starting to brew for that position as well now. Jorge Martin's gap is getting eaten away a little bit again by Maverick Vinales, but he still is quite comfortably in the lead of this race with 12 laps to go. Enea Bastianini still trying to chase down Vinales, and that gap now from Enea Bastianini to Francesco Bagnaia is sitting at 1.4 seconds, a massive gap between those two riders currently. Pedro Acosta still within touching distance of Francesco Bagnaia, but not close enough to mount a lunge or an attack right now. Trying to close down that gap, looking at his front cam, he does get closer within the braking zones, but then that Ducati is just able to pull away under the power sensitive sectors. Just seeing how that Ducati is able to put down the power, it is amazing. Pedro Acosta, of course, being on that Ducati, on that KTM gas bike, and Francesco Bagnaia being on the Works Ducati team bike, the bike that looks to be the form of the field. As Pedro Acosta has a brilliant turn into the middle of the track, being able to make up a little bit more time now on Francesco Bagnaia. Will he be able to make a lunge in one of these corners now, getting so close in these more technical sectors? Between Bagnaia and Marc Marquez, there's 11 championships, but Pedro Acosta is trying to get past both of them right now. Looking at the live championship, Jorge Martin sits in first place with 60 points, Bagnaia 50 in second, Vinales in third with 39 points, and Binder in fourth with 38 points. It is still quite close between third and fourth right now, but Vinales is taking that top spot over Brad Binder. Binder needs to make up a place, but I think Marc Marquez is a little bit too far ahead of him right now. 11 laps remaining of this 25-lap race. As now Jorge Martin sets the fastest lap of the race with 1:38.8. Martin starting to make his attack on the rest of the grid. He's opening up his gap ever so slightly more to 0.9, and now a second to the rider behind him, Maverick Vinales. And Bastianini still trying to chase down Vinales, but not being able to get within touching distance. 10 laps now left to go as we look at a replay of Pedro Acosta trying to get past Francesco Bagnaia into the first corner as Pedro Acosta goes a little bit wide, loses a little bit of time to Marc Marquez behind him. Ooh, just tries to have a move into that first corner. Gets cut off by Bagnaia and then just has to go into the run-off zone. But he is looking so comfortable on that bike. Is Pedro Acosta showing great amounts of skill for the young rider that he is. Jorge Martin's gap is getting eaten away a little bit by Vinales. Now 0.8 seconds is that gap to Vinales, as Bastianini still trying to get within touching distance of Vinales, but still not being able to do that. But the last laps from these riders, Martin was a 1:38.8, Vinales a 1:38.86, Bastianini a 1:38.9. So Bastianini is just falling slowly behind the front two, as the front two are quite evenly matched to the milliseconds. Currently finishing up lap 16 of 25, so we've currently got 9 laps left of the race, as Maverick Vinales now sets the fastest lap of the race with a 1:38.818. So he's also starting to try and make an attack now for the lead of this Grand Prix. Bastianini, of course, losing out from the lead of the race in that first corner. He did have pole position around here, but Jorge Martin and Vinales having a better start at the circuit and being able to pass him. Just watching with Jorge Martin at the front, really leading with a very calm and collected head in this race, not pushing too much and taking all the life out of his tires, but just pushing down and putting in the lap time when it was needed, when others were mounting an attack. The gap is now 0.7 seconds to Vinales behind. It keeps going between 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 between those two riders. It is still so close. That could be the difference between a small mistake and losing your race. So it is still all to fight for out here with 9 laps left to go in this Portuguese Grand Prix. The front three, though, currently have 1.8 seconds to the rest of the grid. Francesco Bagnaia with a 1.8 second gap to make up if he wants to get close to his teammate Enea Bastianini, the current world champion, of course, being chased down by Pedro Acosta. I don't think he's close enough. 0.2 seconds is the gap between those two riders. It could go down all the way to the line as the gap from Vinales to Jorge Martin is now sitting at 0.6 seconds. Vinales slightly quicker than Jorge Martin, but Martin just managing it so well out on circuit. Just watching him come down one of the descents on the circuit, front wheel up in the air, rear wheel steadily on the circuit, keeping him planted down there. Just absolutely amazed how these bikes are able to fly around these tracks without actually taking off. Vinales, though, still trying to chase down Martin, but he has improved on his gap to 0.8 seconds now. The gap now to Bagnaia is opening up even more to 1.89 seconds. So 1.9 seconds is now that gap. Really looking a bit too easy for the front three, being able to chase away. As Pedro Acosta has dropped Marc Marquez, he's still trying to chase down Francesco Bagnaia, but not being able to make that move stick just yet. Alex Marquez has supposedly retired from the race now as he had a crash early on, apparently. Yeah, there he is now getting off his Ducati Gresini bike. Pedro Acosta still all over the back of Francesco Bagnaia. He needs to give it his all if he wants to get past him in these final 7 laps. Still chasing him down, not having the pace, though, into that braking zone. He is, though, all over the back of the Ducati of Bagnaia. Pedro Acosta seeming to learn his lesson and just waiting for the right moment to make that move on Bagnaia. Bagnaia, of course, being the current leading world champion, he is going to have that level head on him and know where he needs to place that bike to make it as difficult as possible for the rookie of Acosta. But Acosta having a brilliant race so far, really all over the back of Bagnaia and being able to obviously steal that position away from the world champion of Marc Marquez as well. Acosta really showing what he should be able to do in the future for us. Really a brilliant rider out on circuit. Acosta's gap now to Marc Marquez behind is sitting at 0.9 seconds, so they've dropped him down as they now come through the final sector of the circuit. Acosta a little bit neater through one of these corners, but Francesco Bagnaia still being able to manage that gap very well to Pedro Acosta. On board now with Pedro Acosta, looking at the Italian Bagnaia that they are desperately trying to chase down on their KTM gas bike. He's getting really close now as they come up the ascent to the first start-finish straight, but not close enough, unfortunately, as he does get the slipstream, still not close enough into the braking zone. Acosta needs to pull a little bit more out there if he wants to get within touching distance of Francesco Bagnaia, but Bagnaia desperately trying to chase down Bastianini, who is 2.8 seconds further up the road. 6 laps left to go of this MotoGP race, and it has been super exciting with the likes of Pedro Acosta giving us some great action out on circuit, still trying to chase down Francesco Bagnaia. You have to ask if maybe he's killed his tyres a little bit too much, and he's just having to manage for the last couple of laps. But he is still really trying his best to get as close as possible to the back of Bagnaia. 900 of you watching alongside with us. Thank you very much for joining. Be sure to let us know who you are supporting down in the comment section below. A lot of support for Marc Marquez. Pedro Acosta also gaining some support here in the comment section, hopefully getting some new fans with the way that he's racing out on circuit. Chasing down for 5th place from Francesco Bagnaia. Bagnaia, the current world champion, desperately trying to fend off the rookie, but the rookie with some great pace out on his KTM gas bike, getting ever so closer within the braking zone. Still not able, though, to mount a lunge on him. He is looking a little bit closer than normal, though, as they come through these last sectors. What can Acosta do now? Bagnaia just looking now to Jorge Martin at the front of the grid. The gap from him to Vinales is 0.8 seconds, and the gap from Vinales now down to Bastianini is at 0.7 seconds. So those front two are also pushing out a gap to their 3rd place finisher right now. Marc Marquez now setting personal Marc Marquez now starting to set personal lap times as he is trying to chase down Pedro Acosta. Pedro Acosta looking like he's made a move. Will he be able to hold on to that? Yes, he does, as he now gets ahead of Francesco Bagnaia, the current world champion. Brilliant patience from Pedro Acosta to wait for that moment to get past Francesco Bagnaia. Bagnaia will not take this lightly, though. He will continue, I'm sure, to chase down the young rider of Acosta. Just a brilliant late lunge for Acosta, seeing a little bit of a wide moment there for Bagnaia, and he just takes an opportunity and makes that move stick. Now, brilliant from Acosta. Big cheers for him in the KTM garage. The gas box will also be very happy to see that, as now Marc Marquez is all over the back of Bagnaia. Bagnaia clearly having used up all of his tyres, now getting put under pressure, as the live championship standings are with Martin in 1st, Bagnaia in 2nd, Vinales still sitting in 3rd, and Bender in 4th. As now Marquez tries to go down the inside, but Bagnaia trying desperately to hold on to that position. Brilliant late battle here in Portimao with 5 laps left to go of this race. This is also allowing the young rider Pedro Acosta to really run away from these 2 world champions fighting it out for 4th place. Or 5th place, rather. And Nia Bastianini has set another best lap of this Grand Prix now with a 1:38. I assume another 0.1, as now Bagnaia is really in limitation mode right now, trying to fend off Marc Marquez. He's lost quite a few positions. I wouldn't have expected him to lose out that place from Pedro Acosta, but now Marc Marquez is putting tons of pressure all over the back of the leading world champion. Vinales was able to close that gap to Martin at the front, but unfortunately Martin has opened it up again to 0.8 seconds. But now Bastianini is slowly closing down that gap to Vinales. Marc Marquez still all over the back of Bagnaia right now, chasing down these 2 world champions, really fighting it out for 5th place. Marc Marquez looking a lot more comfortable on these Ducati bikes than he did on the Yamahas last year out. Of course, making a good decision, trying to make a move where Pedro Acosta looked at a little lunge earlier on. Marc Marquez really trying to make a desperate move now, hopefully also trying to get closer to Pedro Acosta, but now Pedro Acosta is going to be completely out of touching distance in the final couple of laps. He's now 1.8 seconds ahead of Bagnaia already. This just shows, I think, Bagnaia really cooked his tyres a little bit, and now Marc Marquez is chasing him down. Acosta now setting his personal best lap with 3 laps left to go. He has got a massive gap, though, to Nia Bastianini ahead of him. 3.4 seconds now is that gap. Bastianini has brilliant pace out on circuit. He's now well within touching distance of Vinales, but there's only 3 laps left to go as now Marc Marquez takes a late lunge on Pedro Costa, Francesco Bagnaia, and both of them are now down. Francesco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez are out of the race because of the late lunge from Marc Marquez, taking the 2 of them out. Neither of them wanted to give up that position, but they are both off their bikes. Now Marc Marquez gets back on his bike, trying to get back into the race. Will he be able to rejoin, or is his bike unfortunately out? Marc Marquez went to the inside, and then Bagnaia tried to double back on him. Bagnaia then tagging Marc Marquez. This incident is currently under investigation, but those 2 riders are now out of this race. Bagnaia back on his bike. He had nothing to lose. He tried to get that position back from Marquez. Unfortunately, a little bit too greedy, and unfortunately tagged the likes of Marquez, taking the both of them out of contention for 5th place. This now allows Brad Binder to get a few more points here today, as Pedro Acosta is still trying to chase down Bagnaia. As Electroborg says, Acosta was more careful than Marquez. He certainly was. A bit of a risky move for the 2 of them. Marquez had that move done. He just scrubbed off a little bit too much speed, maybe tried to come back to the apex a little bit too much, and it caused the 2 of them to fall off their bikes. Difficult move for both of them. I'll wait on the incident reports from the stewards to tell us what they think. Certainly both could have made that move happen if they had just been a little bit more careful through that corner. 2 laps now left to go of the race. Jorge Martin still comfortably out in 1st place. He's now got a 0.9 second gap to the likes of Vinales. Vinales being chased down by Enea Bastianini, though, in these final closing stages. 0.2 is the gap between those 2. Could we get a late move now in the final stage of this race from Bastianini to try and take 2nd place from Vinales, yesterday's sprint race winner? As we're now seeing Francesco Bagnaia putting himself into the pits. It's going to be a very interesting race debrief for those 2 riders of Marquez and Bastianini, just wondering what could have been. As we're watching Enea Bastianini chasing down Vinales behind him, getting really close. Will he be able to make this move happen? He has now, I think, chased down and has passed Vinales on the last lap of the race as we now start that final lap. But Vinales is down. Vinales falls off the bike. This is going to be a podium now for Pedro Acosta. Yellow flag in turn 1 as everything falls apart for Maverick Vinales. What is happening in these final stages of the MotoGP race? Looks like Vinales may have had a problem, as Enea Bastianini just completely pulled away from him. Looks like possibly a brake issue, or I don't really know what happened. That just looked very odd for Vinales there, falling off his bike. Looks more like he abandoned it than anything. As now we have Jorge Martin making his way through the final sector of this circuit. Our podium finishers for this race are going to be Jorge Martin, Enea Bastianini, and Pedro Acosta. Phenomenal for the young rider Pedro Acosta to get onto the podium, making up those moves when it mattered, getting past Francesco Bagnaia, getting past Marc Marquez, and now he is looking set for a podium out here in Portugal. Only his 2nd MotoGP race, and is set for a podium out here. I'm sure all of you in the comment section are going to be going absolutely crazy for Pedro Acosta, the 31 number rider, as we now see Jorge Martin coming around the final corner, up the hill and across the line to win the Portuguese Grand Prix for himself. Brilliant finish, as now Enea Bastianini also crosses the line, and Pedro Acosta crosses the line to get 3rd place at this Portuguese Grand Prix. Phenomenal race for Pedro Acosta. Brilliant management from Jorge Martin at the front. Led it from lap 1 to lap 25. And Enea Bastianini making that late move at the end of the race. Very disappointing for Maverick Vinales, crashing out on the final lap as well as disappointing for Marc Marquez and Francesco Bagnaia colliding on the second or third to last lap, as well as now Marc Marquez finishes his race in that final position. Face of thunder, though, for Francesco Bagnaia, watching on in the pits. Difficult race for him here today. Tried to manage the damage at the end, but unfortunately was not able to make that happen. So our finishes from this race are Jorge Martin takes the race win, of course, here in Portimao. And yeah, Bassanini in second place, Pedro Acosta in third, Brad Binder then. Damage limitation once again in fourth, Jack Miller in fifth, Marco Bezzecchi in sixth, Fabio Quartararo in seventh, Alex Espargaro eighth, Miguel Oliveira in ninth, with our rider of the day certainly being Pedro Acosta. Alex Espargaro 8th, Miguel Oliveira in 9th, Fabio Di Gianantonio in 10th, Augusto Fernandez in 11th, Joan Mir in 12th, Alex Rins 13th, Taka Nakagami 14th, Johan Zarco in 15th, Marc Marquez then 16th after his crash, Luca Marini in 17th, Franco Morbidelli 18th, and then the non-finishers are Maverick Vinales, of course, crashing out in the final lap, Francesco Bagnaia crashing out in the second to last lap, Alex Marquez retiring from the race, and Raul Fernandez also retiring from the race. What a final couple of laps here in Portugal. Thank you very much for all of you for watching alongside me here on Forever Motorsports. Be sure to check out our channel partner, BITDEFENDER, linked in the description below for all of your cybersecurity needs. Be sure to check out the global leader in cybersecurity, BITDEFENDER. Just watching a replay here from Maverick Vinales. He just goes a little bit wide there to turn one and gets a big snap on his bike, and that throws him off the bike. Difficult and disappointing for him there, that final lap, but what a finish to this MotoGP race. Once again, thank you very much for all of you for watching alongside with me. I've been Reese here on Forever Motorsports. We'll be sure to see you at the next one. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. Thank you very much. I'm going to sign out now. Cheers.